base Easy Rider is checking in for transport duty. Copy, Easy Rider.
So the way that we start this mission setup is, first let's zoom out to the area that we want to include. Now, in order to use this mission, the first thing that we want to do is we want to do a couple cleanup tasks, a couple housekeeping tasks. So we're going to go into the mission information, and if you recall, we called this Fujairah. We have the default mission briefing information. This contains a section called mission details where you can add your additional information. This might be, for example, information on which nav radios the user can or can't use, maybe specific information about threats that may exist, etc. You can use this area here. In addition, you'll have the default placeholder text that tells pilot what an AGHTM mission is, what they have to do, how to fly it, instructions for each pickup location, etc. So once we've set the mission information, we're going to go down to the weather tab, and I like to set the date, time, and weather initially just so I don't forget to do it later. So we're going to pick an arbitrary date here, like let's say September 14th of, I don't know, 2017. Completely arbitrary date, no symbolic meaning, just a date we're picking. We're then going to pick a weather preset template, and for this case I'll go with, let's say, broken 3. We can optionally set our temperature if we want, and we can set a little bit of wind. You'll see that most of the templates have a west to east facing wind set to 0 knots. So we're just going to go ahead and we're just going to increase this a little bit just to add a little bit of wind to our environment. Next up, what we want to do is we want to kind of move things over to the general area where we're going to build our mission, just so we can kind of get things in place. We're not scrolling in and dragging and moving things around ad nauseum. So the first thing I want to do is I want to click the Draw tab, and I'm going to take my Start label, and we want to make sure that we're on Select. If you're not on Select, you'll be actually drawing objects. The Select option will let you pick and move things around. So we're going to drop our Start roughly here, and we're going to take our Olympia, which is our end destination, and if we zoom in down here, we can see there is a little area right here, this little horseshoe that we're going to use as kind of a VFR point for our mission. So I'm just going to move this over here just so I don't lose track of where it is. And we can see that from here to here, if we turn the Draw tab off, is approximately 82 nautical miles, roughly right in the ballpark of what we typically do for these types of missions. So back to the Draw tab, and I'm going to go ahead and now I'm just going to loosely space these out along the way just so they're over here and I have them when I need them. We'll put them in order so that they're roughly going to give us an indicator of about how far apart we need to make our pickup locations. The next thing I want to do is I want to take all of these trigger zones that represent all the pickup locations and I want to move them. And again, these, we're going to click the Draw tab, the Draw panel button rather, and we're going to go ahead and now we're going to take all of these trigger zones and we're going to move them over here roughly in the neighborhood of where we have these markers. Charlie. So now we've moved Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta, Echo, and Olympia. There's 2 additional trigger zones that make up the mission and kind of allow this whole thing to work. We'll come back to those in a minute. For right now, we're just going to take this TZ Start trigger zone and move it over there. And we're going to move this landing one in the neighborhood of where our Olympia base is. The next thing that we want to do is we want to take our starting aircraft position, and we want to first notice that the aircraft always start and take off from ground. That way you have full flexibility on where you want to place them as far as orientation and location. So I'm just going to take this and I'm going to move it over here to our airport. I'm going to zoom in and I'm going to find somewhere that we can put this. Notice we have these two aircraft here. We'll put it right here in the middle of those, and we will face it roughly this direction. So that when we take off, we can head off to the right a little bit and head south. If you'll notice, there is a flight path line connecting all of these points. Each of these waypoints, if you notice, the type is landing, refuel, and rearm. That's set for all of the Alpha Bravo Charlie Delta Echo locations. Olympia is set for landing. The idea is we did this so that you can drag the helipads around and kind of get the waypoints to move along for free with them. So the next step I want to do is I want to start taking my helipads, Alpha, and I'm just going to drop them roughly where I think they're going to be, just based off of my position markers. Apologize for that. One of the waypoints snapped to a different landing location. Finally, we have Echo. And then our last location here is the Olympia Sea Vessel, which we can see when we zoom in. So what we're going to do is we're just going to select this. And we're going to move this over towards where that little horseshoe-shaped island was that we located. There it is. So we're just going to take this and we're going to put it right off of there. And we'll go ahead and we will turn this just to kind of park it parallel alongside of that. So now we've got rough locations for our landing objects as well as our aircraft and our destination point. So what we want to do is we want to now find actual locations for these that kind of make a little bit more sense. So by zooming in, I can see there's kind of an area here where there's some population. Maybe one of these areas would make a good helicopter landing area. If we switch to the satellite map, we can see kind of what these areas look like. So I'm just going to take this and make sure that you have the helipad selected. And I'm just going to move it roughly to there. And I'm going to give it an orientation that's kind of along my flight plan. So that actually seems fine. Now we're going to move to Bravo. And Bravo, if we switch back to the altitude map, we can see we have, much more populated area here. Maybe we want to drop it right here alongside of this road. So maybe we can go ahead and put that there, and we'll change its orientation to kind of make it fit in that corner nicely. Same thing, use altitude to kind of give us a good feel for roughly where we are. This is kind of a big clearing here. Maybe that's a good place for a helipad. No trees or anything like that. We'll go ahead and put this here, and we'll give it an orientation like that. Next up we have Delta. Now looking at the map, we kind of missed the mark a little bit on this one, so we're going to go ahead and move Delta over into here somewhere. This looks like a nice clearing. That's fine. And we'll again turn our helipad to kind of represent the approach. Switch to Echo. Go to altitude. We'll tuck this guy away in here somewhere. Right there looks like about as good a place as any. And we've already placed our Olympia destination there. So now we've got the rough location of where everything is going to go. So now let's see what this mission looks like when we run it. Let's just check out our landing locations, check orientation, look for power lines, things like that in the area that might present a difficult approach, etc. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to run the mission. Yes, I'll save it. And in this case, I'm not going to choose an aircraft. I'm just going to let the mission run without it so I don't have to listen to all of the messages when the mission starts up. So here we can see our destination next to that horseshoe-shaped object. If we switch to our F10 map, let's start with Alpha. We can hit F12. Now looking at this, maybe I don't necessarily like this location. Maybe I want to put it on that patch of grass that's on the other side of the road. Maybe make it a little bit better looking aesthetically. Maybe move it to that field area over there. Maybe tuck it away behind the outskirts of the city over there. I have options. Let's look at Bravo. Again, hitting F12. That's fine for Bravo. We'll go to Charlie, F12. Looking around, this location looks like it should be fine. Go to Delta, F12. Echo, F12. So most of these seem to be okay. But what we want to do is we want to go ahead and make some changes to these. So let's go ahead and go back to the mission editor. And the first thing I want to do is, as I mentioned, I want to move this alpha location over to this grassy area. I think it'll help maybe make the helipad blend in a little easier. Whatever your reasoning, just showing you how you can move things around, fine tune it. Here at Bravo, this one was okay. Here at Charlie, maybe we want to do something a little different here. So, because this object is just a helipad, we can have the option to change this to whatever we want. So I'm going to change it to one of the helipads that comes with the mod that we're using here. I believe it's the SAM Site Assets Pack. I may be wrong. But we're going to go ahead and we're going to change this helipad out so we can very quickly do that. Another option that we have is perhaps we don't want this to be bound to a helipad at all. We don't want to see the physical helipad. So maybe we can select this one, and instead of making it a helipad single, we'll change this to an invisible FARP. So now there's no physical asset on the ground, but we still want to indicate to the pilot where they have to land. So we can do that very easily. We can hit O to create a static object. I'm going to select structures. I'm going to go all the way down here to the mark tires. Mark tire with white flag. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create one right here. We'll move the FARP to fit into our landing area once we have it established. So I want to make this go, I'm just going to make this one called Tire 1, and we'll give it a unit name of Tire 11. And the reason we're doing this is because when we make copies of it, all of the names will match, just be incremented by 1. So I'm going to copy that object with Control C. I'm going to measure approximately 50 feet in this direction. I'm going to put my mouse cursor in that location. I'm just going to hit Control V. Wherever my mouse cursor is where I'm going to get the object. I'm going to make another one over here, and then we can go, let's say, it looks like this tree is probably going to get in the way, so let's go ahead and make it extend in this direction. So we'll come 50 feet this way. One there. And now all I'm going to do is I'm just going to start placing them in the middle to kind of create a little tire area for the pilot to land in. And all I'm doing is moving my mouse cursor, hitting Control V when I have the cursor roughly where I want it. And if you notice, all of the names, as I mentioned, are incremented by 1. So this will make your objects a lot easier to find if you name them before you start copying them. So now the only thing we need to do is we need to actually take this invisible FARP and drop it into the middle of our landing area. It's not the prettiest, but it demonstrates what we're trying to show here. Next up, what I want to do is I want to take the echo location, and I want to just drag this out to C here. And in fact, we'll put it right near this little extension. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to change this from heliports to sea shelf objects. And I'm then going to choose the oil rig. Again, I can change my orientation to kind of make my helipad line up with how I want it. And I can fine-tune my location wherever I want to put it. So right there is fine. Okay, so now we've made some changes. Let's go ahead and test it. Go ahead and hit Control P to run the mission. If the mission has not been saved, it will prompt you to save. Again, we're not going to choose a slot. We're just going to hit Escape to go into the mission. F10 menu. Alpha. Hitting F12. And notice that now that helipad is on that patch of grass. I can't say it's a huge aesthetic improvement, but you understand the line of thinking. If we go to Bravo, Bravo was untouched. Charlie, if we switch to Charlie with F12, notice we now have our modified landing object. If we switch to Delta, we should now see our improvised parking area. So as the pilot's on approach, he should see this area. He knows to land there, pick up his passengers. Final one is Echo. And Echo is the one that we switched to an oil rig. So if we hit F12 there, we can see there is our oil rig waiting to be landed at Echo Station. Okay. So now we'll go back to the mission editor. This brings us to the end of part 2. Be sure to check out part 3 where we will complete the sample mission and discuss some ideas on how you can enhance your missions by adding things like other air traffic and some cargo ships traveling along the coast. If you like these videos, don't forget to click the thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching. Until next time, Coder out.